Welcome to Intimacy Liberation Army series on self-awareness. I'm Duke DeLate, dating coach for a long time all over the world, and want to leave some of my legacy behind this year. So right now we're in the middle of our day 2 of the 31-day deep dive into self-awareness for dating. And today's episode is called Why Self-Awareness is the Key to Lasting Love. So we were talking yesterday about self-awareness and having your abilities to set boundaries correctly and deal with communication strategies. And if you didn't see that video, check right there, or I think it's over here, and watch that. But today we're talking about how lasting love, long-term relationships are going to be affected by your ability to know yourself. If you ever feel like you're stuck in a cycle of miscommunication or repeat the same mistakes relationship after relationship after relationship, then you're not alone. You're stuck in the same cycles because you're doing the same things, right? They say, it's not Einstein, but somebody made the quote. He's like, doing the same thing over and over again, expecting different results is the definition of insanity, right? If you know yourself, you know kind of where you're coming from, how you act, how you interact, what triggers your behavior, and all those things, you're going to be able to communicate much better. And self-awareness isn't just like, oh, self-awareness is key and you have to deal with. No, it's the cornerstone of all relationships. Because the first relationship that matters is the relationship with yourself. The person that you spend the time with the most is you. And if you are lying to yourself or you're unaware of how you act and how you deal with the things that you deal with, then you can surprise yourself and feel at effect or as a victim to external reality and then things that go on in your life because you don't feel like you have control over your own faculties. Now, it doesn't mean that you necessarily have to have control or do the right thing in every situation. But self-knowledge is different than self-control. Knowing how you are and how you act allows you to prep for things. It allows you to make better decisions. It allows you to find the gap between the action and the reaction and go, okay, well, is this really the best thing for me based on the goals and the values that I have? And if you understand your emotions, your behaviors, your needs, then you can approach love, you can approach relationships, you can approach how you talk to yourself, all your self-talk, with clarity and authenticity. Clarity is a big deal for me when I'm coaching and teaching. The more clear we are, the better decisions we can make. Sometimes your decisions are stuck between a rock and a hard place. There's no good decision. You just kind of pick the lesser of two evils. But the more you know about the situation, the more clear you are, the more often you're going to make the right decisions, right? What is self-awareness in relationships? Define self-awareness and its role in personal growth. I just did that. Explain how self-awareness impacts communication and conflict resolution. I did that yesterday. Are we in the right? Yeah. Share examples of being self-aware versus unaware in behaviors and relationships. Okay, yeah. So, I was in a relationship a while back with this exotic dancer person, and she was a sweet, lovely human being, and she had good sides and bad sides. We didn't work out for a number of different reasons, but she would constantly be trying to catch up with the events in her life, right? So something would happen, and she'd be like, "Oh, I'm so stressed out, and I have all these, I have anxiety, and I need to take a break and not deal with this for a while, and then come back to it fully refreshed." And that was her coping pattern. She would be like, avoid until the threat isn't there anymore, and then come back, and basically she would just avoid everything until it went away. And it's been a very useful strategy for her. But the problem is, in a relationship, when she didn't understand why she felt overwhelmed or felt overstimulated by a situation, she couldn't solve it. So the strategy was always the same. It was basically drop to the level, cut everybody off, and shell up until it was safe to come out again. And I was trying to explain it to her. I was like, look, I'm not going anywhere. So if you villainize me and I'm the problem, then uh, you're going to poke your head out and you're going to still see me as a threat, right? So what we need to do is be clear on what is overstimulating, what I'm doing that's so I can avoid that, and then we can have a more useful conversation. And that never worked out. You know, she would employ the same strategy because she put herself at effect to the uh, all of the things that pissed her off in the world, because she would not take a look and provide more clarity into figuring out why she was responding that way. Because very often when we respond to things in the environment and feel overwhelmed, feel offended, betrayed, or whatever, very often we're responding to things from childhood. We're responding to things from our caretakers and attachment theory. Like, we're responding to things that they're not the proper responses for now. Like, when I had problems in childhood from my caretakers, I was like 7 and 8 and 9 years old, and I have a bunch of years now of experience and making good decisions and bad decisions and all this stuff to weigh in if I wanted to make a new decision. I don't need to fall back to the most basic uh, automatic response when I get triggered. I need to understand what's going on and make better decisions so that I can grow as a human and be more effective in life. And so that's probably the biggest reason why I'm pushing the whole self-awareness thing so much in January. Uh, Most of the problems that I get from my clients, they come, this impossible thing I can't overcome, and whenever I'm out there, I feel rejected, and then I reset myself for 3 days, or I don't want to go back to that club because it's just not my vibe, or I go out on these dates and they never go anywhere, and they're putting themselves at the effect. There's two sides to the NLP equation, right? Cause and effect. You're either at cause, where you're making things happen and then you're seeing the effects that go on, or you're at effect. You see the cause and then you feel like things are happening to you. Classic self-help literature is going to call this victim mentality, right? In reality, we are both cause and effect of all sorts of things in our lives, right? It's never uh, diametrically opposed. Like, you're when I speak to somebody with a communication intent, right? I'm causing something, but I am also at effect of their response. I'm also at effect of pre-framing their response, like seeing how they're about to react to me, so that I can guide myself in without, tripping on triggers and things that are going to make things not a co-creation, right? So, uh, in real life, we are both cause and effect at all points, but it's a lot more advantageous, or it's a lot more efficient to look at most situations as if you were the cause, as if you were saying, okay, I'm going to do this, and then what happens in the world? Now I'm going to try this, and what happens in the world? I'm going to do this, what happens in the world? If you look at it from that lens, you're going to see solutions, because you're asking the right questions to your inner self. You're like, okay, if I do this, what happens? And then that question goes, okay, what happens? What is happening? Okay, how is that related to what I just did, or the mood that I came across with, or the state that I'm in? How is that related? And your brain will answer those questions. And so it's a lot more effective than be like, oh, what else is going to happen to me now? Oh, that just happened. Now I have to fucking deal with all this. Like, being at effect of things limits your options when it comes to decision making, and being able to move things forward and grow with other people. The problem with communication and dealing with a bunch of other people is there's so many variables. Not only do you have your experiences and your views and your values and your past decisions weighing in on what's going on right here, you also have theirs, and so it's exponential. Like, it kind of, like, your insecurities and triggers cross with their insecurities and triggers, and sometimes it just fucking lights a match and everything goes crazy. When you could have just stopped and been like, okay, I'm going to do this. This happens, and you can cut things off before they get escalated, because you're not operating from the triggers, and you're saying, okay, what happened like, okay, so if I was in an argument with one of my clients last week, and he was talking about how the world is always out to get him, and he's always got these problems that he never feels like he's getting anywhere. He doesn't feel like he should be doing anything else, and for the rest of his life, he's just going to give up on women and whatever. And yeah, he's just moving into this shallow spiral of it's really just attention seeking from the coachee perspective. I've seen it a few times in my career where guys would just be like, I'm helpless, help, blah, blah. Because usually what I'd come in with is like a crescendo of rationalizations that would take out the table legs of their belief system. And then they felt invigorated and re-inspired because I was able to, break it open. But the problem is if it happens more than once, then it becomes a pattern. They start to play helpless and victim so that they can get the dopamine hit of the crescendo of somebody's rushing to their aid coaching thing. So I was having this conversation and he's just like, yeah, every time I go out, like the girls, they don't want to talk to me, and they just make me feel like shit. And I can't use. Oh, the thing is poking my audio button. Okay, and I'm like, look, man, like ever since we started training together, like you have gotten 3 partners since, gone through the relationship, saved yourselves the heartache, evaluated well, ended them on relatively good terms, and kept moving forward, learning a bunch of lessons, right? The difference between you and some clients who are getting much better results is that those clients understand that they are just testing things in the world to discover who they are, discover how they act and interact, and discover how that dovetails with other people's interactions. You are trying to set these weird arbitrary goals, and then you get pissed at yourself for not meeting them. And then as soon as you meet the goal, you will move the goalposts so that doing it again or consistently is no longer going to serve your I'm satisfied with this, and then you move it. And so he went from okay, I don't want to be under the thumb of my toxic ex. Okay, we got him out of that. And then he's like, okay, I want to just have sex with a bunch of girls. Okay, so we started doing that. And then he's like, okay, so I don't want to bang girls that are under a 6. And I'm like, okay, fine. And then I don't want to do 7s anymore. Okay, fine. Like your evaluation of how hot they are or whatever, or what you think you can get is fully arbitrary. You're defining this, right? But and then he's like, okay, well, I don't want anybody over 25. And then so now he's going for super hot 22-year-old girls, and he's like 32, right? And now he's like, I don't know how to relate to these people. I'm like, yeah, you wanted to go after this target market, and now you're interacting day in day out with these people, and you're not willing to adapt how you see the world so that you can include their vision in your world. So now, obviously, you don't feel like you can relate, but this happened in a period of I don't know, 5-6 months, and he never was satisfied with his results because he didn't know what he wanted. He just kept, okay, well, I got that goal, next goal, and then he would throw one out as arbitrary, but he didn't feel like he was making progress. He didn't feel like he was growing. He didn't feel like he was moving along the path and discovering new things on life. When in reality, he had gotten a bunch of sexual partners. He had gotten upwards in his feeling of deservedness to the level of hotness that he thought they were, and he had gotten the ability to stay out of the firing line when people were trying to take advantage of him. And then he got to the point where he was kind of a regular at this bar and regularly talking to girls, 21, 22-year-old girls that really fired the dopamine off for him. But like he wouldn't accept the victory of the progress. And Tony Robbins says that happiness is about progress. If you could feel like you're moving forward in something, then you can be happy. And well-being is about being able to keep promises to yourself. If you haven't gone to my super deep explanation on that, I've got the first podcast, the first Limitless influence podcast, either the first one or the second one. I'll post it here. They we talked deep about like what creates happiness, what creates what creates well-being, and uh, if you can't ever be happy or you can't ever be satisfied with the progress that you're making, then you're never able to enjoy the fruits of your efforts. And then you very quickly sink into this thing where it's like all I do is work hard, and you get this identity of a guy who grinds and never gets results. When in reality, you got results all over the place, and you're just not seeing them. They're not triggering it off. The reason that's a problem is because, or sorry, the way to fix that problem is to be self-aware. Be like, okay, what do I actually want? Why am I responding this way? I don't like the way I'm responding. What are some other ways I can try? And then systematically going through that and being satisfied most of the time with the decision that you're making is going to go a long way into creating that sense of progress, that sense of happiness. So this one says, connection between self-awareness and lasting love. Okay, there's 3 points here. First, you got to understand your emotional triggers, what sets you off. 2, you got to build better communication skills. We covered that a bunch yesterday. And 3, you got to create healthy boundaries. And that's kind of the new one for today, so I'll go deep on that one. But understanding your emotional triggers, I just talked about it, right? If you feel like you're at effective stuff and you can't analyze why you respond the way that you respond, you're kind of helpless and getting thrown about by the waves of the environment. Like I said, it's not that we are cause or effect, right? Like, we are both. But if you focus on being the cause of things, then you can tweak and do things that can give you that sense of progress, make you feel like you're growing, make you feel like you're getting somewhere, and you're not repeating the same cycles over and over again, right? Understanding your emotional triggers goes a long way into making better decisions when those triggers come up. They call them triggers because and then something fires off, right? But it doesn't have to. Robert Cialdini, the guy who wrote Influence, Psychology of Persuasion, he calls it the click-whir effect. It's like an old tape player. If you press the play button, it clicks, and then it runs the tape, and whatever's on the tape plays out, right? So we get all these tapes kind of installed in childhood, and then whenever a trigger goes off, we click, and then we just play it out. And usually it's something modeled, right? So we were, watching our parents fight growing up or whatever, and mom felt fully unsafe, and then she would lash out and then shut down, right? So then when we see a trigger that looks like the things that mom responded to, we go, oh, well, fuck you, and then we shut down and we don't let any more communication in to protect ourselves. But like, it's not even our tested way of doing things. It just got modeled for us. We just saw what happened, and then, that's how we do things, right? And we don't have to do it that way. We don't have to play the tapes every time the thing fires off. We can choose different strategies. We can test new things. Sometimes we test them smaller than they are in real life so that we can prepare, but we don't have to deal with it that way. And the more self-aware you are, the better you're going to understand those emotional triggers. Number 2 is handling better communication skills. I went super in depth in that yesterday. The better boundaries you can set, the better, the more clearly you can express your needs, wants, desires, future projections, like things that you want to co-create with somebody else. The more clear you can communicate those things by focusing on the self-awareness of it, the better you're going to be at dealing with the real problems and not the phantom problems in the relationships, feeling one way or the other, and then having to hash that out on the surface level without really understanding why you do the things you do, why you think the way you think, and what kind of values influence the decisions that you're making. Now, the third one is setting healthy boundaries. And that kind of dovetails into building better communication skills. Sometimes you need to set boundaries, on multiple layers, right? You have boundaries with the world. I don't put up with this shit in my life, right? And then you have boundaries with individuals. Be like, look, when you do this, it makes me feel like this, and I want to go do this. I want to hide from you for the next 3 days, and I don't want to answer your phone calls, right? And and then if you can communicate that, then once they get over their initial like, oh well, that's fucking fucked up behavior. I would never do that to you, whatever. Then you can be like, all right, but that's how that makes me feel when you do this. Is there a way that we can stop this before it escalates into both of our trigger zones and deal with the issue at hand? Because usually when you talk to me like that, you're dealing with something, right? You have issues, and if you could talk to me differently, then I'll be better able to hear you when you're talking. Right? You don't have to just treat me disrespectfully just because you're angry and has nothing to do with me or whatever, right? And you can set boundaries like this. That's you're sort of co-creating the solution with the other person. And the only way that you can correctly set those boundaries or effectively set those boundaries is by knowing why you believe what you believe and being able to articulate it clearly. Sometimes people will hear you articulate things clearly and then not respond and just choose to do their dumb shit anyway. Then you have to enforce the boundaries, right? Like, then you have to be like, all right, well, when you do this, I will do this. I was dating a girl for a while, and she just got really, really violent when she was drinking. She would overdrink. She would have one or two and then fucking finish the whole bottle. And when she got into that stage, she would be really mean, really rude, really violent. And I was like, look, I got a boundary on um, being treated that way. I'm not going to tolerate that. And here's what I'm going to do. If you want to drink, I'm not going to tell you what to do with your life. But you, me, and alcohol are never going to be in the same place at the same time. So if you start drinking, I'm gone. And I'll come back when you're, awake the next morning or whatever, and we can talk about stuff. But like, I am just not going to tolerate being treated poorly, and in order to avoid that, I'm just going to be gone when you're drinking. And if you try to reach out, I'm not going to respond. So I'm not telling you what to do. I'm not telling you how to drink or whatever. You do what you need to do. But I am not going to subject myself to the bullshit and then have you do the apologies and the weirdness later, right? I'm just being like, all right, cool. You're drinking? I'm out. I'll see you later, right? And that boundary was clearly enforceable. Like I didn't have to like, why did you do this? You're doing this all the time, and fucking yeah, blah, blah, blah. I told you not to do this, and I don't get into any of those conversations. I just pick up my coat and I fucking bounce. And sometimes I have to deal with the hurt of it, right? Like I'd be like, man, I wanted to hang out with her tonight, but she decided that she wanted to go in this direction, and so I let her do it. And that actually created a situation where I didn't have to deal with all the stuff that I was setting boundaries against anymore because she would just find somebody else to abuse in that state. And eventually she ended up stopping drinking, and more power to her. That was a good decision. But she made that decision on her own for her own life reasons and felt fully in control of that decision. She didn't feel like she was doing it to appease me or whatever, right? Like she was like, okay, I understand. I'm going to stop doing this because of my own reasons. I'm excellent, cool. And then I get to hang out with her more because, yeah, I'm not gone because the rule wasn't broken, but I still enforce my boundary. I am very clear. Like I don't have like a moral problem with alcohol. I don't have a moral problem with even coping behavior. Like okay, I had a long day, I need a drink or whatever. I don't care. That's fine. I do have a problem with being abused, and no matter how profusely you apologize the next day, you still did the thing. And if I say that's consistent behavior, I don't need to be around for it. And so I clearly understood why I made those decisions, and then I clearly articulated them. And that was a proper enforcement of boundaries. Like it was the highest rate of success because I wasn't blaming or shaming or using manipulation tactics to be like, look, you need to feel a certain way and you should feel guilty for that. And why would you ever hurt me like that? And all that other shit. I didn't have to do any of that. I was like, look, here's what's going to happen. I'm not going to be around when you're drinking. And that's it. And, the emotions are up and down or whatever, but the most effective solution to that thing was what I employed because I was able to communicate. I was self-aware enough to know why I didn't want that to happen, right? Uh, there are so many people who think that like abuse will never be tolerated, right? And there are some people who love it, right? Their self-esteem is to a point where they like it confirms the things in their mind. And I started to realize that I was having a bunch of different relationships. Some girls want to be told what to do and look to you as an authority figure, and that creates their attraction switches. For me, I stopped dating girls like that because I don't like being a fucking warlording authority figure. I just like to attack problems together and co-create new solutions. And but I don't judge them. Like I'm not sitting around thinking you're lesser than me or whatever. We got two different headspaces now. And uh, yeah, I think that's what I want to say about boundary setting. The more self-aware you are, the clearer you can be in your communication. The more self-aware you are, the clearer you can be in your communication, and the better you can enforce your boundaries. And it takes you into the cause mode, right? You're not at effect of other people breaking your barriers or boundaries. Like, like, oh no, you crossed my boundary. Now I have to enforce it, and I feel shitty about it. And now I'm never going to have any friends or no relationships because I'm always, my standards are too high, and all that narrative just goes out the window. And you're just like, look, this is why I believe what I believe. I understand that there are other viewpoints. I've made these decisions, and I would like you to respect them. If you don't, here's what's going to happen. It's not an ultimatum. I'm just not going to be there. I have a bunch of videos on my channel over the years of talking about the theory of the only real power you hold over somebody in an economic relationship is leaving, right? Is getting yourself out, not being there to abuse or bounce things off of or be projected onto, right? And so it's usually one of the highest use cases in boundary setting because, like, okay, I'm just not gonna be here, and no judgment, no shame, no weirdness. It's just like I won't put up with this behavior, uh, and so I don't have to fight it and compromise and get frustrated, having patience with you and all that shit. I'm just gonna not be there when you're doing that, and we can have a conversation in a way that we agree to later on about it, so that we can solve that and move forward because we don't need a relationship where we're constantly like giving things up for each other. It's stupid. So, second step here, benefits of self-awareness. And we just did that one. Oh, it's repeating itself. Connect. Oh, okay. So you can the benefits of self-awareness in long-term relationships. Okay, so the first one says how to open up without fear of judgment. So this is super key. You can strengthen your emotional intimacy by being vulnerable, by being honest and laying everything out on the table. But it's very hard to be honest if you don't know what you believe. I mean, yeah, you can be honest by saying I have no idea, but that's usually not a good um, conflict resolution thing. You can't just be like, I was talking to this girl the other day, and I said, okay, so you just flipped out on me because of something that wasn't like, it really didn't have anything to do with me. And you decided to villainize me because your expectations weren't met, yet you had never communicated those expectations and given me an opportunity to win there. It's a lose-lose game there. So I would appreciate if we can figure out how we can mitigate the setting expectations and not communicating a thing. How can I help with that? And so that we can kind of get over that in the future so we don't have to sit there. I don't have to sit there and get yelled at for no reason, right? Um, at this point, I don't like getting yelled at all. Like, even if it's quote unquote justified, like, I'll tolerate a little bit of it, like that much. And then, like, look, find another way to communicate, right? And we can do it this way. And so, I came back and at the end I said, "Is that something you're comfortable sharing with right now?" I got this from Heidi Priebe. She's a attachment person on YouTube. She does a lot of attachment theory stuff, and I'll link her over here. And I was like, look, is this something? Oh no, it wasn't Heidi Krieger. It was Tice Gibson. And so I'll link her here. I was like, is that something you're comfortable with dealing with right now? And she's like, no, I'm not. I said, okay. Um, I would like you to think about it, and I'll check in with you in a week and see if we can get some resolution to that, because it's very important to me that we move forward with our relationship and resolve some of these things so that we don't have to deal with some of the more surface level bullshit. She said, okay, cool. And then I let it go. I didn't sit around and blame and shame or any of that stuff. I was just like, okay, cool. And then the next Saturday, I said, look, we talked about this last week. I asked if you could come up with a way to communicate with me or find some strategies around setting expectations that I'm not meeting and then not communicating about it and then getting mad at me for no reason, right? And she said, I have not yet come up with anything. I said, that's okay. I'm going to check in with you next week. And she's able to make her if she's going to change how she responds, she's going to do it on her own volition, making her own decision, considering the fact that I think it's important that we don't do it that way again. Now, if she does that again, I'm going to have to set a boundary and be like, look, this is the wrong way to do these things because I feel bad when you do this. I don't want you to treat me that way anymore. So I'll have to not be around if you ever start this kind of thing again, right? I'll have to set those boundaries, right? But I don't have to set boundaries if I'm just talking, right? And the intimacy between us is increased, even though she's dealing with some attachment things. She's dealing with a need for security in the world that I wasn't providing at the moment, and there's a lot of variables there, but she has opened up in a bunch of different areas over the last couple of weeks where she's like, okay, reaching out in the ways that in the love languages that she uses, in a way that allows us to kind of move forward with a bunch of other areas. She's feeling safe enough because I'm not sitting around and holding something over her head for a long time. And so that increases the emotional intimacy. Does it fix everything and make everything super perfect right away? No, not necessarily. But the more aware I am of myself, the better I'm able to communicate in ways that are not judgmental, not re-triggering, not creating new issues where we could have just dealt with the other issue. The second note in here, the benefits of self-awareness in long-term relationships, is that it improves conflict resolution. Because if you know your triggers, you know what really sets you off, you know the rules that you live your life by and that you expect other people to live their lives by, and you articulate them, you can communicate them clearly, then conflict resolution is very simple, right? We have a conflict. What are the rules of engagement? Here's how I'd like to talk about it. Okay, how would you like to talk about it? And then we have this exchange. If it goes into abuse, or if it goes into neglect, or if it goes into stonewalling or something else that you don't put up with, and you're like, okay, well, I don't feel heard in this space, and I don't want to sit here and listen to you yell at me, so I'm not going to. And that's that, right? You can resolve that conflict by no longer having a conflict, no longer bringing the fight to the thing. Very often in the beginning of the whole communication training that I was doing, to all the pickup artist stuff and all the dating stuff and all the manosphere stuff and all the red pill stuff, everybody's like, oh, women like power, so you need to be alpha male and put your foot down and not budge and all this other shit, right? This is true. It works, especially with a certain type of woman, like who is constantly testing to see if you can handle everything for her or whatever. And the rationale is really good, actually, but it doesn't apply to everybody, right? Like, sometimes people need to feel loved and heard and respected, right? And the more securely attached people are, I don't have any stats on this, I don't have any studies to back it up, but it seems to me that if they got their own vision and they're trying to do something with their lives, and they have their own focuses or whatever, the more securely attached they are, the less likely they are to. Forgot where I was going with it. Anyway, the less likely they are to employ the things that break apart relationships, like abuse and neglect and stonewalling, a lot of stuff, to protect themselves because they see a little wider picture. I don't think it's better necessarily. Like varying levels of attachment, they call like securely attached in the middle secure attached, right? And then they call the stuff on the outsides, whether anxious, avoidant, and all these different categories, they call it disorganized attachment, right? Where it would just be better if you were chill as fuck, but you have varying levels on the outsides. There's nothing wrong with it. Like it's a viable strategy to deal with life, and that's why you've been that way for so long. But when you come from different sides of the attachment paradigm and you can't communicate, it slows down your progress of growth. And so if you like efficient and faster growth and being able to co-create things quicker, then you move towards the secure attachment thing. Anyway, the third benefit of self-awareness in long-term relationships: enhancing personal accountability. The one thing about trust in relationships is that if somebody does trust you, then you also kind of reciprocate the trust, right? Like if they trust you because you are forthcoming and honest even when it's hard and whatever, then also you have to trust them not to abuse you or hurt you or minimize you or whatever when you are honest and whatever, even if it's hard. Because if every time you try to be vulnerable and then they stab you, you're going to hold a little bit back naturally, and you have to make a very conscious decision to continue to be open, and let those people kind of flow out of your life if they're going to continue to do that. And if you're not trying to control and puppet master the situation, and you're trying to like really communicate and vibe with somebody, you're accountable for your own behavior. You can't now blame your behavior on your triggers. You can't be like, okay, well, I just did that because you did that. I just did that because I'll never put up with that, and compromise in all those different ways. Like the more self-aware you are and the more you communicate this stuff, the more accountable you are to your own rules. And then you can't just switch them up all the time because they know the rules. And then you're breaking your own rule. And they're like, oh, okay, well, fuck. So now you gotta be accountable to yourself. And when you do a lot of self-analysis, you do a lot of journaling, you do a lot of mindfulness stuff, and you're like, okay, I can deal with life this way. The more accountable to yourself you are. Like you start to see the patterns of how you think, and even if you judge them or you don't judge them, you start to see how effective they are banging up against real world situations, and then you're able to make better decisions based on that data. Building self-awareness. Yeah, you know what? I'm going to skip this section because we're going to go super deep into this later. But the 3 steps here, it says practice regular reflection, engage in mindfulness, and seek feedback from trusted loved ones. I don't like that one so much because I think seeking feedback from people around you is trash until you can trust the people around you. When I was first dealing with a lot